The Audio Art 100HC is definitely a top 10 amplifier for me. Just a beautiful design, late 90s, low impedance, high power output for a Class AB amp. The same designer of Audio Art moved to DLS a few years later and had something to do with this jewel. DLS is a Swedish company, started back in 1979, creating police radio receivers. Today we have the ultimate A6 amplifier from them. Unfortunately, this amp is discontinued. Let's go back to 2004, look at the Car Art and Electronics directory. We can see DLS listed here. They had several models, A2 all the way up to A8. We're looking at the A6, $628 back then. And that's equivalent to $990 in 2022. I was fortunate enough to find one almost brand new. Let's check it out.
What's in the box?
Now, out of all the amplifiers I've owned and tested and borrowed, I've never seen one that came with a materials list. It includes all the different components, including the MOSFETs, the diodes, the capacitors. This has all audio grade capacitors. Very nice. Even tells you to burn in the amplifier. In addition, you get a really nice owner's manual, which covers all the different models of the DLS Ultimate amplifiers from the A2 all the way up to the A8. Then you get a little bag that includes some extra hardware, including hex keys, extra fuse, and also some mounting screws. Then we have the remote bass cable, which goes with this awesome remote bass knob for back then. Includes the level control, very nice, and a phase adjustment. Power LED on the front there, and it does have a telephone style connection. Make sure it's firmly in place. And here is the DLS Ultimate A6 Monoblock amplifier. Let's take a closer look. This brushed aluminum finish looks really nice, but those who know may know this looks like a different amplifier. The Genesis, yes, from back in the day, Genesis amplifiers, these were polished aluminum. DLS Ultimate, though, definitely stole some of the vibe here. The Genesis, though, back in the day was quite a bit more. $21.99 back in 2001. That equates to $3,700 US in 2022. Back to the DLS. The amp has Tiffany style RCAs, a subsonic filter 25 Hz at 18 dB, as well as a in and out level control for the remote bass connection, low pass filter 125 Hz down to 50, level control 7 volts to 0.2 volts. It has 2 speaker outputs even though it is a monoblock amp. These accept up to 7 gauge is what the manual says. Also, you can see the 35 amp fuses there. Power in, it has 2 different inputs. They include 4 gauge connections, a remote connection, and on the far right we have one for fan out, and we have 2 more additional 35 amp fuses. What about the dimensions? On the long side, 16 inches, and for the width, 9.4 inches, 2.9 inches for the height. Millimeter equivalents are there as well for those outside the US. As far as ratings go, 4 ohms, 500 watts, 2 ohms, 870, 1 ohm, 1100 watts. According to the manual, these are at 13.8 volts DC. Now let's fire up the good old SMD, Demore Engineering Amplifier Dyno, so we can do the output test, find out how much power this amplifier exudes. If you've never seen these tests before, on the left, the RMS power output in watts is displayed. In the middle, the ohm load. On the right, the voltage of the dyno. We'll also have the remote indicator so we can calculate efficiency.
This here's my favorite part.
First test we'll run here is the 4 ohm mono test. Amplifier is rated 500 watts at 13.8 volts. Certified test first takes us up to 1% total harmonic distortion. And let's see what we get. 579, 14.35. There you go, a little bit over that 13.8 that it's rated at, but it's close enough. Uncertified up to clipping. Let's see what we get here. And we'll get a little bit more, 585 at 14.32. Next up, we'll try the dynamic test. Check out the amplifier's ability to play the dynamic tones. Dynamics of music, 595. See if it jumps up anymore. 609 at 14.5 volts. And what about that efficiency? This is a Class AB amp, so we don't expect high efficiency, and we don't get it. 62% at 4 ohms. Next up, 2 ohms mono rated 870 watts at 13.8. I think we'll be closer to 14 volts here. Let's see. Certified test first. 1% distortion. 938, 14.2. It does seem that the ratings here are definitely right on par. This is not a highly underrated amp. Obviously not an overrated amp either, but uncertified test up to clipping. Get well over 900, 943 at 14.18. Now let's try that dynamic test here. 2 ohms. There we go. Getting up into the high 900s. Can we bust 1,000? Yes. 1,017 at 14.38. Efficiency at 2 ohms is 58%, so it continues to drop. Now we'll move on to the big boy 1 ohm mono test. According to the manual, it's rated 1100 watts. There are some postings like in the magazines that say 1200 watts. We're going by the manual. It says 1100, that's what we're going for. Certified test, we still get the 1200 in case it is rated there. 1208, 13.97. Again, the tests here are at 40 hertz. Uncertified up to clipping. Let's see what we get here. See if we can beat that 1200. It's honestly a little less. 1169, my voltage dropped a little more, 13.52. That would have done the 1200 watts had we provided it the 13.8 or higher voltage. Let's try dynamic. Here we go. Oh yeah, getting over 1300. 1346. Is it going to keep counting? Make your bets. 1346 at 13.87 volts. Efficiency, yeah, right at that 50%. Class AB for the win. As a result, here you go. You can see the amp did its ratings plus just a little bit more in every single ohm load. And this amp is like almost 20 years old, like 18 years old at the time of this video. Now with all these SQ parts, you know, we're going to hook it up to the 412s and see if it bumps. Let's find out. Can it flex those quad 12s? Any of the distortion that you may hear in this video is literally just the mic not being able to handle it. These sounding great, had no issues other than the stuff on the walls. It was rattling that you also may hear. And to my ears, that 1200 watts was plenty to push these 412s. Now let's find out what's inside. SQ for days, absolutely. Let's flip the amp over, take off the 8 different screws that are on the bottom here. And let's find out what's inside.
Shazam!
Here are the beauty guts, which do remind you a lot of the Audio Art 100HC. And going back to the material list that's provided, it's got all quality components like Elna audio grade caps. It has Motorola transistors. It just has everything here top of the line, either Japan or made in the USA or Taiwan for some of the connections. You can see the 2 different transformers as well as all the smaller capacitors on the board here. It would not be fun to recap this amplifier. And also the way the transistors are squished between the board and the heatsink. I know a lot of technicians do not like this because it makes the amps a lot harder to work on, but it does look super cool. So one last flyover, and then we're going to move on to the pros and cons. What I like, what I think could be better, at least things to be aware of. First up, the pros. You know it, accurate power ratings, Tiffany RCAs, build quality, amazing. Sound quality components, no doubt. Class AB amplifier for the SQ heads. It's also actively cooled by a temperature control fan that's on the bottom. Includes the bass remote and the bass remote cable. Props to DLS for not requiring you to buy that as an extra accessory. Things that could be better, the efficiency, of course, on a Class AB amp's not great. Is this a copy of the Genesis? Definitely on the outside it looks like it. You will have jealous friends. This amp is almost 20 years old. Good luck finding one. These are not easy to find, and when you do find one, it probably won't be as good a shape as this one. Sorry. There you have the amp dyno test and review. The DLS Ultimate A6 sound quality monoblock amplifier from back around 2004. This amp is beautiful, high quality, Nice components inside and out. Just exudes quality just looking at it, feeling it. Overall, this amp is awesome. I'm not sure I'll let this one go. Who knows? Thanks as always for watching. Till next time, Big D, I'm out of here. One thing I did want to mention, if you have one of these, when you power the amplifier off, it takes it almost a minute for the power LED to fully go out. So it's like the capacitors are just sitting there draining out. But just so you know, there's not a problem if your amp does that. Now let's try the certified test at 8 ohms mono, just to see what we get just for fun here. 40 hertz certified test first. 322 at 14.35. Next, we'll reset the dyno for the uncertified test at 8 ohms mono. Who knows, somebody might want to run the amp at 8 ohms mono. And we'll see what we get. 322 at 14.34. Let's reset it for the dynamic test. Sends a pulse tone into the amp. So close, all the different tests here. 329 at 14.42. Well, that can't be enough, right? We got to do another test. Let's try 0.8, where we're only going to do dynamic, because I know this amp is not designed for under 1 ohm. It got 1199. I decided to go ahead and stop it because I didn't want to damage the amp. Thanks as always for watching until the very end.
Waves go.
Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit